All right, thank you for staying with Kenya's Choice 2022 right on Citizen TV. We're still speaking about the elections and what's going on right now. Let's see what your feedback is and what you're saying online. And Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya, use the hashtag Kenya's Choice 2022. Let's bring that up and show you what you're saying there. We have Luke Wanjohi says, generally, IEBC Kenya has done a commendable job. Once the court cases are settled, they must begin working on improving the general voter experience at the polling station. Okay? See what else is saying here. Anthony Khan says the problem is not voting nor counting at constituency tallying centers. The problem remains in the transmission of presidential results, in mutating figures and document formats, and vulnerability of the tech devices and systems used. Okay? Crispus Adams says, I agree with Prof that the infighting at IEBC is as a result of the political interference at presidential candidate level. Taking more funds to counties could cure it, but to me, a pure parliamentary system is the best solution.
Another option.
Okay. Parliamentary system, we'll talk about that in just a bit. And Ochola says, just because the 2017 presidential election nullification order that forms 34A from the polling stations are final, it didn't mean that we shouldn't confirm the credibility of the data entered in the forms 34A. This is where we are headed.
True.
Okay.
That's also true.
And Okelo Mwalimu says it would be interesting to see how the divided IEBC Kenya will approach the petition. The questions that rings loud through my mind is who has control over affairs of the noisy commission between Chebukati and the Cherera's team. Interesting time to be alive. All right. And Saska, we're coming to you on this issue where that it's actually Mukwanja who raised it. That the reasons why this is such a high-stakes game is that the winner wins everything and the loser loses everything. What is the remedy to this? Could a possible coalition government be a remedy to this?
Yeah, Trevor, remember that the August polls is Kenya's fourth consecutively disputed presidential election. And I keep asking myself, are we Kenyans hopeful that one day we will break the cycle of divisive politics, you know, as what Franklin has mentioned earlier? Because you see that there's one camp that celebrates victory, as we've seen 20 days ago, and then the other camp that cries about electoral justice and rigging of elections and playing around with numbers and the transmission not having been done well. And we've seen that the handshake could be the possible closest thing that has attempted to bring about end of divisive politics in Kenya since 2018 to date. So, I mean, I doubt if we will ever break this cycle of divisive politics because as Dr. Duncan here mentioned earlier, presidential politics is usually very, very competitive. And as you said, winner takes it all. So I wonder if a handshake or a government of unity will solve this at the end of the day. I really wonder. Because I think Kenyans, we need to reach a point whereby in our democratic space, we uphold the will of the majority of people who vote. You know, if a winner is clear, who's won, and it's declared, we should be contented.
Yeah.
I think Kenyans should learn to concede, especially our presidential candidates. And as we look now, if we look at Kenya's economy today, we're really in a very bad space. Even with a rerun, it will be very difficult. You know, we're already on our knees. And if you look at it objectively, even a rerun is quite risky because it still produces a winner takes it all at the end. So I wonder what will really be helpful here. And Trevor, I would like to move into the voter apathy, especially the youth, because we need to ask ourselves two questions, you know. Why are the youth staying away from voting, you know? And number two, what implication does this have on our democratic space moving forward as Kenyans? And as you know, IEBC was hopeful to register about 6 million young people in Kenya, and I think they barely got about 2.5 compared to 2013 and 2017 elections, whereby they registered over 5 million young people. And Trevor, you know, in Kenya, the youth 35 and below constitutes about 75% of our population. That's about 35 million people. So we have a huge bulge in this country. And you know that the youth have very little faith that voting will change their fortunes in this country. And as you know, we always see the same faces on the ballot papers every election cycles. And these are very, very famous people. And as maybe I will put it this way, political retirement in Kenya is very rare. Very, very rare, you know. And most of these young people think that, oh, you know what? Big decisions about our lives as young people are made at boardrooms and not at the ballot, which is quite shameful, to say the least, because we see less young people, me included, not really participating in key decisions in this country or issues that even touch the young people in this country. So you'll find that, yes, there are issues with the youth having not turned up, not just in these 8 elections, but also on our 9th August elections. And you know that the young people are facing hard life in this country. There's high rate of youth unemployment, high cost of living.
Yeah.
There's high inflation, high debt, national debt. And the youth and the people of Kenya are really battling a lot, especially with the economic fallout caused by COVID and the war in Ukraine, high inflation and corruption in this country. Moving forward, I hope that the youth are going to take up the mantle of leadership in this country and to see more young people being represented in politics. Because, as you know, our campaigns are very expensive, and majority of young people do not have that financial muscle to run even just an MCA seat in any country, in any ward in Kenya. So I think it's time for the Kenyan youth to be part of the electoral process in Kenya, to own up the system, to own up decisions, and to be part of the decision-making table to issues that affect them directly. Okay.
But Prof, what is the remedy to this winner takes it all situation that we seem to find ourselves in?
Actually, if you look at it again, it is an issue of politicians not doing their job. How does the winner take all? I think we need to open up these things for debate. Who's the winner first? And how does he take all? The winner in this particular instance, we look at as the president. And how does the president use the resources that are actually available in the country? And the resources are allocated to the president through a budget. And that is done by Parliament. And we have quite a number of independent offices outside there that are not even controlled by the president. But what happens is that your member of Parliament is busy chasing CDF or joining Handshake, so that they're not able to oversight government as exactly well. What we're talking about is actually just a case of dysfunctional institutions. Because if Parliament was doing its work properly, then it is Parliament that will be telling the president how the president should be spending resources, and not the other way around. But because the fellows are asleep there, the practice in Kenya is that the president decides and then bypasses all those offices, including budget, and eventually execute. We have a situation here, and we've been told again, that up to 40% of the expenditure in this country is outside of the budget. That is fiscal indiscipline. In fact, we don't have a country. It means that the president can wake up any day and do whichever project he wants, regardless of these institutions. People have been sleeping on the job, and yet they want to run the country. You go there, people tell you that, oh, there's nothing like political opposition. We are not saying you're opposition. You do have an oversight role of the executive. Is Parliament doing that oversight role of the executive? They're not. They're lining, so that they can be bribed, so that they can prioritize some bills by cartels. And even the roles that they've been given by the Constitution, they don't want to do them. They actually want to go and get opportunities to steal some little money that that would have helped ordinary whatever. In Kenya, everybody wants to be in the executive. MCAs want ward fund. MPs are insisting. In fact, now they're saying, look here, we are going to deal with these people who want to remove CDF, and that's going to be the first priority. And then, of course, we are going to disband SRC and so on. And somebody's just telling you, please, you are employed to legislate, lead the Constitution. Just do what the law told you to do. None of these guys are interested in that. Some of them don't even know what legislating looks like. They actually want to build classrooms in the village. You see, the problem we have is not, in fact, for me, there's nothing like winner take all. What we have are very lazy politicians very lazy political parties that cannot actually do the role that has been ordained upon them by the Constitution, and they come here lying to the public that winner takes all. To where? Who gave winner those things? And I keep actually highlighting, even at county level, it's the same thing. And I keep highlighting the case of Mandera as an interesting case, where basically Ali Roba lost to the Economic Freedom Federation Party, or whatever they're calling it. And Ali Roba actually had no MCAs in the county assembly. And I sat with Roba and I told him, look here, how do you run this place, where everybody is from the opposition? He told me, Alfred, where's the issue? Those guys are the ones who are meant to budget. They're the guys who are meant to legislate. I execute. If they do stupid things, the clans will deal with them. In fact, it's even better for me because they cannot say that the governor, bulldoze them, to do things that they actually did not want to do. It is good. They control the assembly. They're the ones who are doing planning. They're the ones who are doing budgeting. They're the ones who are approving those plans. They're the ones who are allocating for me resources. If they refuse to allocate resources, up to them. They'll have to explain to the clans why they failed to actually do that. But the point I'm trying to illustrate here is that, in all our institutions, at county level and at national level, the way people look at it is you look at the governor as the lord of the looters at county level. And then you look at the president as the lord of the thieves at national level. And then you hang around. In fact, the analogy they all use is that the animal is too big. So the country and our taxes are looked at as animals that are then looted by these psychopaths. In fact, what you're talking about is the failure of all these guys, to take the country forward. There's nothing like winner takes all. We do actually have systems and structures that will stop the president from spending money whichever way he actually wants to spend. But because these bastards have been, irresponsible, and I withdraw that, but I hope they had. They need to come in. They need to come in so that they can do the work that they were given to do, instead of sitting there and telling us that the only way to get a road built in your village is by getting the presidency, which is a lie. Okay.
Let me bring in Mukwanja on this. Mukwanja, so is this then an institutional failure rather than an executive overreach?
Trevor, it is both. And what Prof, with a lot of respect to, they say professors are always right. But with due respect to Prof, what he's explaining is ideal. The reality in this country is that we must interrogate the scenario of whether it is disrespectful for a Kenyan not to request for some favor from the elected leaders, or whether it is sinful to elect a poor leader. Because our culture is that we have reduced the social contract to a transactional contract. And it is not possible for these politicians to operate in a scenario where they have to go back to their constituencies every day, and they are more rewarded by the voters for being social welfare dispensers than doing the legislative work, doing their oversight work, and doing their representation work. That does not count. Ask my good friend Duncan, Ojuang. He has tested the ground and he knows how the voters behave. And if you look at the basic, not really basic, the very deeply rooted electoral malpractice, such as voter bribery, it is done with impunity because the voters promote it. So unless we address this culture of handouts, this culture of leaders being social welfare dispensers, the executive will always capture and have an overreach over the other arms of government, particularly the legislature. If you can look at the conduct of the business of the 12th Parliament, you will see that the leadership of this House was actually being picked and fired at State House. Why wouldn't the leaders, stand up? The second thing is that we need now to go to what you have mentioned, institutional failures. We have to strengthen political parties so that they're organized in a way they do their business. If there is a political party position, then parties can whip their members to respect that position on the floor of the House. although there is an opportunity to dissent respectfully, but it must be explained. Finally, I don't think the handshake is a cure to this challenge. That is why I proposed, and I still hold, that it is possible we begin to rethink our choice of electoral system design with the first past the post and our ethno-regional politics, our patriarchal culture, our inability to put women and consider women into leadership position, our love for money in politics, our following of riches and shenanigans and drama in politics that can only be managed by these people that have made money that they cannot account of their source, and they are ready to throw it at the public. That is the problem. We need to look at how do we get the women to have adequate representation? How do we get the young people that don't have the huge sums of money to get the opportunities? How do we get the ethnic minorities represented? This is when the issues will come to the table by the women leaders, by the young people, by the ethnic minorities. But the way the political parties are today, they can only be around ethno-regional leaders and charismatic ones, and they are about catch-all. There's possibly not a possibility of whipping their members to stick and stand up to the executive overreach that has the goodies. Finally, politicians have understood that without these opportunities to interface with the public, then they are out of the scene. That is why the MCS, instead of oversighting the governance and the budgets that they have, they are looking for opportunities to go and have some tournaments, have some bursaries, so that they can interface with the public. That is why the national government is lackluster in terms of allocating sufficient, having functions, having money follow functions, but concentrating a lot of financial resources at the national government, because the president still wants to interface with the people. And the easiest way for the politician to interface and resolve their problem of being elected and re-elected is maintaining public resources so that they can be able to deploy whenever they want to favor their political opportunities. Thank you.
Yeah, so Dr. Juang, so then what then is the cure?
Right.
Should we change the entire electoral system? Someone had mentioned on the feedback that we talked about that maybe we should go the parliamentary system.
Right. I think Franklin is looking at things from micro level, but we are trying to manage them from macro level, and that is the disconnect. So he has a laundry list of all what is wrong, but we are trying to look at things from why they are wrong. And then that discourse is a little bit eluding him, to put it mildly. So to the extent that, let's start even with the youth. When we talk of youth, I think we mean maybe suburban youth, because this is the election where we have seen youth from Jengo in the rural elected to MCA. Yeah. We have seen youth from unemployed from maid. Toto said she worked as a maid, elected to women rep. We have seen charcoal burners elected. We have seen one who was harvesting sand in Maimayo, elected. So it's like a tale of two cities. There is darkness and light. And when we talk of youth, the ones who can easily access the microphone, the burger-eating ones, the one in Netflix and wherever, generalize their experience to be the youth experience. Because when I go to my rural place in Homa Bay, youths are never behind. Youths are so much politically mobilized. But when I come to Nairobi and in conference room, you hear youths this, youths that. And I think we are talking about a certain sect of youth that we shouldn't leave behind, yes, but we should not probably have a general brush, and we need to maybe demystify where is the problem. Now, when it comes to our election, the constitutionalism in our constitution, the presidency is already demystified. That's why we have counties. it came as a check and balance. That is why we have independent institutions, including IBC. It came as check and balance. That is why we have their budget coming through Parliament. But so far, the Parliament have been giving them a pass because of handshake, which we have a formal law, but handshake become an informal law that is governing us and not the formal constitution. And it has become a carte blanche and a free check for whoever is governing to cover all their sins, if not most of them. So then we cannot blame the constitution. We do not have a constitutional problem. We have bad people problem. And that is where Kenya is. So when, and I like what Professor Manya is saying, the issue of winner takes all is a language couched in anti-democratic. It is a language couched from Machiavellian politics, where the ruler is the sovereign. But come to 2010, where the people are the sovereign. And the people means they can even recall their leaders, they can impeach their leaders, they are supposed to be participating. We have seen the judiciary not blinking whenever the president have gone out of line, because we are a constitutional democracy. Every action must be supported by law. Yet we have people, unfortunately even some young people, that are stuck up in the Machiavellian scenario where the presidency and the power belongs to whoever becomes the president. Even this no disrespect, but bipolar kind of approach, where we are saying there is 48 against 50, is pitting and a language of begging for nusumkate. Because ultimately, Kenyans have not said, I cannot live with Raila, without Raila, or I cannot live without Ruto. In fact, most Kenyans, just like any other young man who probably is in love with two ladies, had to make a choice and say, am I marrying Mary or Jane, and said, I'm going with Mary. It doesn't mean they hated Jane. But what are politicians telling us? Kenyans are divided. Kenya is polarized because somebody wants to bargain. Kenyans are not polarized. Kenyans are not divided. Kenyans don't mind who is in power. Yes, they had their preference because you only gave them one vote. And they had to make one vote, just like that young man who have to make a choice between these two lovebirds. Who do I pick? Does it mean that whoever they left, they hate? Quite the opposite. So there are some languages, and I think that the ghost of BBI is resurrecting in a way. And every time we are disappointed, we are looking for position for the very leaders that have abused us. There is nothing about how do winners take all, because nobody invited anybody to run for presidency. It's everybody prerogative. If there is one position for a newscaster, what do we do with number 2 and 3? Do we say, let us have 2 and 3 newscaster? Because I can't imagine the pain of number 2 walking away. I mean, why then does it come to election that then we say that we now need to create number 2 and number 3 because we cannot see them walking away? Isn't the promise that the reason people run is to serve Kenyans? And if that is the reason up front, then what is wrong if your agenda is even supported and implemented by your competitors? Yeah. So I don't support this sensationalization that people are so divided, things are so polarized, there is so much tension. We know that there have been attempts to create some. There is none. We know that people are not polarized factually. We come from the same regions. We hear what people are saying. People can be made to be polarized. Then they will be told that you are polarized. Then they are told that you are mad. Then they are told that you are mad because the government is gone. Then they are told that the government is gone because they will not support you. Something that is counter to institution. Look, for example, at how devolution have worked. I come from Homa Bay County. And look at the contribution of the region. Dr. Mondimbai is from Homa Bay. People who gave their life, so to speak, for devolution. What have we done with the devolution? It has been ping pong, it has been ghost workers, it has been a time our turn to eat and not to serve our people. People from Homa Bay will say, we go to Kakamega, we are seeing better things. We go to Machakos, we are seeing better things. And you are saying, what are you doing with the government we have? Why can we just play with our devolution? Why don't we have mechanism? And we are fighting for this government. Look at the Constitution, finally. Constitution says we have 48 governments. That is the Constitution. 1 national and 47 in the counties. Remember the beginning of devolution where people were running and saying, can you imagine I went to a county and I had somebody being called excellency. And I was thinking the president is coming only to find a mere governor. Exactly. That is what our constitution wanted to do. That we can see excellencies in 47 situations. So I don't see, and this is the impulse that we probably need to check, that we are very able to see squirrels, but not elephants. The elephant is the politician using us and defining the roles of polarization, defining, I don't know, winner takes all. No. Those are some illusions. Thank you.
Okay. That's asking a lot to make submissions on.
Yeah, Trevor, as we know, elections is not an event, huh?
Yeah.
Elections is a process, and elections become credible when the processes around them are transparent. And we know elections, the election process is quite simple. Yeah? Number one, it has to be well understood by all citizens, and that is done through a civic education. Number two, it needs to be transparent. Number three, it needs to be credible, and finally, it needs to be verifiable. And I think if you look at Kenya's August 2022 polls, IEBC have done most of those, except only when it comes to the tallying, the counting, tallying, and the verification of the presidential elections. And I think it's the high time that us Kenyans move beyond disputed outcomes, election outcomes, particularly in the presidential polls. And it's time for us to embrace our long-term development plans, focus on our economy, and focus more and support a peaceful democratic transfer of power. And as I said earlier, you know, IEBC has done quite well in its election administratively, you know. As much as they secured their funding a bit late, we've seen that, you know, they've trained the police officers, they've audited the voter register, and they've even called and responded to issues raised by various political parties. And even at some instances, they've consulted with the judiciary on legal or illegal interpretation of some areas in the law. And we've also seen in this year there's been increased media engagement and access. Particularly, we've seen every media house basically counting and verifying the Forms 34As. Yeah. And I think overall, we know that IEBC plays a very central role in our elections. And it's us Kenyans who do not trust our institutions, and that's why our election cost a lot of money. I think it's 40 billion Kenya shillings, these 2022 polls. And I think because of the distrust we have with our constitution, with our institutions, yeah, we find that as much as our elections are technology-oriented, it's also very, very manual. Okay. Because our counting is manual, our voting is manual, our verification is manual. And I think it's time for us to look inward as well as Kenyans, okay, and say, is it worth spending this amount of money just because we don't trust each other?
Okay. Let me take closing remarks starting from Franklin Mukwanja. Where do we go from here? Closing remarks, really brief.
Thank you, Trevor. I think we should not really push politicians too hard to consider the first instance. They have a constitutional right that is clearly stipulated, that they need to ascertain their loss, either confirming it was fair or unfair through the legal processes. We just have the presidential petition now in the Supreme Court. Let it be dispensed of by 5th. We will be able to be guided on the fairness or unfairness of the process, and that should be allowed by the voters for the politicians to go through that cycle of accepting or conceding to the realities. Okay. The other petitions will come in, and I think we are not out of the woods yet. Laws and technology will not entirely fix our elections.
Yeah.
We need to find ways of how do we strengthen our institutions and how do we rebuild confidence in some of these critical institutions.
Okay. Professor Menya, closing remarks.
So I think the one thing that I keep reflecting about is whether it's possible, it's humanly possible to have simple election in Kenya, as was envisaged by the Constitution. And I've met very many Kenyans, and the ones I talk to seem to have normal brains. And I get totally confused that none of these Kenyans can figure out how to simplify the Kenyan election, particularly the presidential tally. And you see, everything is very simple. Voting is very simple. Receipt of these things is very simple. But then after that, there's this complex thing that is legislated and what of transferring and transmitting stuff and so on. I'm saying, what is so difficult verifying these things at county level, presidential, and confirming them at parliamentary level, and confirming them at county level and so on. My submission is that Kenyans have refused to have a simple system, led by their politicians. They don't want a simple system because a simple system is very difficult to corrupt. So although the Constitution says, let's make it simple, let's make it accurate, let's make it verifiable, Kenyans are saying, okay, but then how do we steal? Then we create new laws, then we create new things, then we bring in technologies to transmit, then we can do arithmetics and so on. And in that whole thing, then Kenyans can't figure out the numbers of people who voted that we even know. The reason why Kenyan elections are not simple is not because Kenyans don't have a brain, it's because Kenyans don't want them to be simple, starting with our presidential candidates, because simple things are difficult to manipulate.
Okay, Dr. Juang, very brief. And it's interesting what Prof is mentioning, because all the other elective positions are declared at county level.
The county level. But even that verification and saying that there is the issue with tallying and verification in Bomas is not true. Because the first place for tallying is at the polling station. On the table, in fact, if you went to my county or my polling station, it was done in our vernacular, because we were all understanding the same language. We said Achiel Aria Dek, and we counted, and they were put on a form, which they took a picture, agents were given copies, and was sent to Bomas, and a copy to the constituency. Came to the constituency, again another calculation was done. A simple arithmetic. In Bomas, it was another verification. So look at the metamorphosis of the story. Go up to the polling station, for example, even where the candidates voted. We saw them in the line voting manually. We saw, for example, when the results came, first of the results came from Honorable Senior Counsel Martha Karua polling station, where they had about 200 and the competitor had 900 in our own polling station. That same result went to the constituency, was brought to Bomas. Then what do we find? This thing has been hacked. You wonder, was the line hacked? Was the voting, which is manual, hacked? Was the counting, which you could even use in local language, hacked? Was the Form 34A hacked? And I'm glad that, court and lawyers, being people who can see through issues, will be able to see the main issue. But I think that I conclude by saying, my famous say that in our place we say, if you do not allow fools to go to a market, who do you expect to buy rotten bananas? Some of these stories are rotten bananas that must also be bought, and it's good for the economy. Okay.
Yeah, Trevor, Kenya's 2022 polls has the potential to be a pivotal milestone for democratic consolidation in Kenya. And looking at the affidavits that we've read so far, we've seen a lot that has happened in the back room, away from the cameras, coming out now. And it's interesting. I mean, this does not surprise me personally, and I'm sure a lot happened in the previous election cycles. We just didn't get to know. And I think we are maturing, things that have been discussed in the background has come out in the light. And I think this is a good thing, if you may ask me. And I think we need to move away from this once the Supreme Court gives a ruling on 5th of September. Because what I want to look forward to is a Kenya with equal opportunity for all.
Okay.
And also to reignite the belief of all-inclusive economy and a shared prosperity for all Kenyans.
All right. Thank you all for making time this evening. Professor Alfred Omenya, Urban Development Planner, Dr. Duncan Ojuang, Dean, School of Law, Africa Nazarene University, Saska Labarakwe, Public Policy Expert, and Franklin Mkwanja, Executive Director, CMD in Kakamega. And thank you all for keeping it Citizen TV and Kenya's Choice 2022. We'll give you all the results as soon as they come in. We know most of them have now taken a break as it stands, but as soon as the announcements are made, you will get them. 2 governors in Kakamega, 2 governors race, Kakamega and Mombasa. 4 constituencies, Rongai, Kacheliba, Pokot South, Kitui Rural, 2 wards, Nyaki, which is in West Ward, Diminti North, and Nairobi, Kwanjenga. All right, that's where the mini postponed elections have happened and the counting is happening. My name is Trevor Mbija. Have a great night ahead. Bye for now.